Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. I'm Chris Carr.
And I'm Kristen Johnson.
We are having a snow day. It is a snowy blizzard day in New England.
Yes, it is.
And our power's still on, so we're good.
Just in case, we're telling you this now, just in case.
In case we disappear. If our stream suddenly ends, that means the power went out. And unfortunately, all this stuff doesn't run on batteries. And I've got no generator. So bear with us.
Yes.
We're getting like crazy gusts of winds, like 60-mile-an-hour winds out there. And it's snowing, but it is a light snow.
It is. It's very fluffy.
It's like a fluffy snow.
And it's terrible with the wind because it keeps
batting
us in the face.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's blowing off the car. Like usually when we have these storms, my car's buried and all that stuff. But it's so windy out there, it just keeps blowing. I imagine somewhere there's like a 100-foot snowbank.
Probably.
Somewhere in the state. I don't know. But we have a great show for you guys. We're pretty excited. Oh, I wanted to mention your shirt too, because last week we were off. Well, I think it was a Thursday.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Where are we?
We went to go see Evanescence. Hailstorm.
And what's her name? Lilith
Czar.
Yeah,
it was the opening band. So yeah, three screaming women.
That's what he said, and the guy behind us said the same thing. So
yeah, but they were awesome. Their voices are amazing.
Yeah.
So
hi, Liz Milne.
It was a lot of fun. We had a good time. So we've got
so just bear with us, please.
Awesome show here, and we're just getting a couple things together. So what was your favorite part of the Evanescence concert, Kristen?
Not too sure. There was a bunch of favorite parts. I guess when she sang with Lizzie Hale, and Lizzie Hale brought her out first as well. So
yeah, I like that too.
They had like a duet together on both their sets.
Two of them. They did one during the Hailstorm set, which was prior to Evanescence,
right?
And then one during Evanescences. Consciousnesses. It's a tough word. That's a tough word. But we got a great show for you. We have Chris McKinnell joining us, and Chris is the director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research, which carries on the work of his grandparents, Ed and Lorraine Warren, which I am sure you guys are familiar with. He began working with the Warrens in 1980 at the age of 16. After his first incredibly intense night of poltergeist activity, two demons walking in a room, pounding that shook the walls, levitation, growling, upside-down crosses, and a physical assault of the woman of the house by an entity. Chris never looked back. He has assisted or led investigations on some of the Warrens' most famous cases, as well as several thousands of others. He now leads an international network of paranormal researchers that continue the Warrens' mission all over the world. So this is really fascinating. Let's bring him right on. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
We're doing okay, but as I understand it, you were not in the middle of this blizzard.
No,
I heard about it. Sounds I'm so sorry I'm missing it. No, I'm in a little fishing village in Toogoonga, Colombia, and it's about 93 degrees here.
Oh my gosh, 93.
So
I can't even imagine it at this point. And I'm sure you're familiar with Connecticut. We're not too far from Connecticut. We're in Rhode Island today. And it's cold, quite cold.
It's when the wind blows, the gusts, the wind chill factor is like -10.
Yeah, wee bit chilly.
Cold.
Well, I'm 57. I've seen plenty of bad winters in New England.
You've had your share.
Yes.
So
I see Michelle Millions is with us. She's one of our members as well.
Hey, Michelle, how you doing? Oh yeah, lots of folks out here. Mm-hmm. Hey, Anne-Marie Young.
Hi, Ann.
Greg Koss.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to have these guys and wonderful people to spend a Saturday with.
Yes,
absolutely.
So I'm sure one of the first questions you get asked, and you must get asked this in every interview, but it seems obligatory. What was it like growing up with grandparents that are paranormal legends, Ed and Lorraine Warren?
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember when I was growing up, they weren't exactly legends yet. They were just the weird people that investigated haunted houses. They were ghost hunters, which is a term that we definitely are not crazy about today. But back in the day, you know, it was great. It was a challenge sometimes. It was, but I was always proud of them. And by the time I actually started going along with them on things, I was 14 years old when I started going on lecture tours with them, and it was amazing to watch them work. You know, when a TV show would bring us to a house that they knew nothing about. They went in completely blind. And my grandmother would start rattling off all of this information. And the reporter that was with us had prepared a story that he had not yet written. And he's showing me his notes while she's rattling off all of this stuff. I'm like, holy crap, my grandmother's a mutant. It was amazing.
I imagine.
Yeah, I imagine. You are part of a lot of those cases, and some I imagine you were probably too young to be part of at the time. What were some of the more...
I wasn't a part of Amityville or the Perone case. Those are before my time. But Satan's Harvest, the Maurice Serial case, I was one of the lead investigators on that. The Haunting in Connecticut, that was actually my case.
Wow.
The Schmuel case, I helped on that one quite a bit. That was out in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. And then, of course, we just went on and on from there.
Wow. What would be some of the things that people wouldn't know about those cases that maybe... I know the movies, of course, are sometimes completely, 99% fictionalized, and, that's pretty common knowledge because they are movies. But what would be some of the things that people might not know about some of those famous investigations that you...
Well, for instance, in the Enfield case, which is the second half of Conjuring 2, that they completely got wrong. I didn't even like the movie, to be honest. And I think James Wan's wonderful, but that movie was terrible. But in the real case and in the movie, there's a young boy with a stammer. He has trouble speaking. And I've never understood why they didn't include this in the movie. Matter of fact, they wrote off everything saying it was the ghost of an old man. There was no old man involved in that case. It was not human. These entities were incredibly powerful. Now, my grandparents didn't have a large role in that case. It was really Maurice Gross, who had investigated for a number of years. But the girls in the case really remember my grandparents very fondly, because they were the only investigators who would come in and would bring groceries and other things. The family was very poor. But that young boy who had the stammer, this is tough. There's a disease called progeria, which will age you rapidly, and you will die of old age by the age of about 20. Well, he was only about 10, and within a matter of weeks, he aged to death.
Oh, it's terrible.
Weeks. Wow. And when they were taking his coffin, his body, to the church by a horse-drawn carriage, the voices were screaming obscenities at the people on the streets, and they were hurling rocks at the people. When the body was brought to the front of the church, in front of the altar, it was thrown off of the conveyance that brought the coffin down, and the lid came open, and the child's body spilled out onto the ground.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
No wonder why it's so tough for you to talk about. It's terrible.
Yeah. When people talk about this work, a lot of them, they treat this like a hobby. They like it's fun. in the foundation, we never lose sight of the fact that we're dealing with people's lives. Mm-hmm. And it's why we don't publicize the specifics and the private details of our families, because one of the things I learned from my grandparents, and you have to understand, it was a different time for them. They didn't have a choice. If they wanted to help people, they had to publicize their cases. Today, we don't have to do that. Today, we have the internet, and we can get out there like we are with you, talking to people without having to expose the people we serve. And that's a good thing. I still remember one night I was in Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
Oh, yes.
Now,
Tewksbury.
And the night we arrived, there were hundreds and hundreds of cars in this little neighborhood, this development. And everybody was out trying to get to this house because the family had called the police. And the police didn't take it seriously, of course, but they put it on the police blotter and it was picked up by the newspaper. And all of a sudden, it's famous for being a haunted house in town. Never forgot that. And I would never do that to a family. It can be incredibly devastating. And when they're already going through hell, the last thing you want to do is expose them to the public.
Yes.
Sure.
I understand
that.
Some people have no compassion.
Sure.
When it comes to that.
The Conjuring is kind of famous for that. And people, destroyed Bathsheba's headstone and Wood Park, and there was a lot of vandalism. And people living there at the time were really unhappy with that movie when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're definitely, we don't do that.
No, we understand that. That's the best way to go in, is having compassion.
Yeah, we treat everybody as though they're patients, really. And just like a doctor, we don't expose them to the public.
You have like a HIPAA. So
yeah, exactly. We do. Actually, we do. We have our own code of ethics, and we hope, we don't expect everybody in the world to join us, to join the foundation, but we hope that through our example, more people will start adopting our code of ethics.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, code of ethics is a great thing to have.
Absolutely.
Now, you're also known as an exorcist. Is that right? When did that come around, and what part of your life? And did the power of Christ compel you?
6 or 7 years ago. Here's something I want to make clear to people, because there's a lot of misunderstanding, and I hear an awful lot of people say, "Well, doesn't the Pope have to okay exorcisms?" Well, yeah, if you're a Catholic priest, but the truth is, exorcisms are performed by every religion in the world. Every single religion works. Why is that? That to me is fascinating. Why is it that paranormal phenomena manifests according to our cultural and spiritual beliefs? It's different in India or in Nigeria than it is here in Colombia or in the United States or England. That says an awful lot. Yeah, it says an awful lot about us, about what we're capable of. And what these entities are is not what we think they are. And that's important to understand. I became an exorcist only because there was a need. It wasn't something I ever planned on doing. But there was a case with a man who was coming under possession. I was contacted by the family and by an investigator, and they needed help. And while I was talking to him and interviewing him, he came under possession.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, it's not the first time I've had to deal with a person under possession. I think the very first time I had to deal with that was Maurice Theriault from Satan's Harvest. He was the guy known as Frenchie in the Nun movie. By the way, the movie is absolute garbage. There's nothing at all true about it, other than in the credits, you see some of the exorcism of Maurice Theriault, which I was at.
Right. I remember that.
Yeah, my grandfather had his heart attack just as the exorcism was starting. I will remember till the day I die, my grandmother telling my grandfather, Ed, why don't you have a banana? You're probably low on potassium. And the next morning he was in the hospital because he had a massive coronary. It wasn't in Conjuring 3 with Arnie Johnson. It was actually during the Maurice Theriault exorcism.
Oh,
but
okay.
It was an emergency. This man came under possession, and I had assisted in a number of exorcisms, and I immediately went into an exorcism. I had it there. I knew what I needed to do. It wasn't something I planned on. He ran out of the house, and we realized we need to do something differently. So the next time, I made sure that he was tied to a chair with towels wrapped around his arms and legs, and then zip ties put around those. That way we were protecting him. He couldn't be hurt by the zip ties. And I started to do the exorcism. He did come free, and he's been fine ever since. So thank God.
Wonderful. Yes.
Now, and you say exorcism. What is really involved? Are there those stages of possession that we hear about?
Stages.
Manifestation and oppression, obsession.
Yeah, exactly. In the Western world, in the Christian world, hauntings follow a set pattern most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. It starts out with everything external to you. That would be the manifestation or infestation, as my grandparents called it. That's when your keys go missing and you hear the footsteps in the hallway and you hear voices and things like that. Everything's external to you. Now, most hauntings are just like that. And 99% of the time, it's your grandmother or the former resident of the household. And there's absolutely no reason to be afraid. You're not afraid of any of the people you pass on the street every day. Why would you be afraid of your ghostly grandmother? You know, these are just people like you and I.
Right.
If I can send one message to people, don't let your fear overwhelm you. Until you have an absolute reason to be afraid, then don't be afraid. You don't need to fear footsteps. You know, what have they done to you? Not a thing.
Well, not yet,
You know?
But not every haunting is scary or should be considered.
True, but your fear helps things manifest. You feed things, and your expectations can turn something that is completely harmless into something very, very dangerous.
Nefarious, yes.
So it's better to not fear, to not let your fear take over, because negative entities will feed off of your fear, and good entities, normal people, are going to be pushed away by your fear, and something else can enter then. I've seen that happen far too many times.
Yeah, I would agree.
After that, of course, is called oppression. And oppression is when the spirits start to influence your behavior, but you still have free will. Okay. And that's when you start becoming more negative, maybe depressed, angry, mercurial. And over time, that becomes worse and worse and worse until in extremely, extremely rare cases, it becomes full-blown possession. But that is incredibly rare, just as demons are extremely rare. In reality, it's almost never a demon.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially sensitive people, you can feel the negative energy, and they always say, well, a lot of people do, oh, it's a demon. Oh, it's a demon. No, it could be somebody that's passed on that's really pissed off, or
Exactly.
Right. And that was going to be one of our talking points.
Yeah.
How do you define a demon in your experience?
I don't know what a demon is. I know what it's not. A demon is not a fallen angel. A demon is not any of the things that we have created these superstitions about. I know my history. I've had to. I've spent 40 years studying this. Even the term Satan is incorrect. It was originally the Satan. The Satan is a spiritual prosecutor originally, thousands of years ago. And the idea was they were there to test your faith. Even in the book of Job, the Satan is a prince of heaven who walks into the throne room of God and says, "Hey, God, I hear you got this guy and he's your most faithful. Let me test him. Let me test his faith." And God says, "Go ahead. Don't kill him, but you can do anything else you want to him." Even in the New Testament, when Jesus is in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, it's Satan that's there testing his faith and making sure that he is ready for what's coming. So we've taken a lot of these old gods from Sumer and Mesopotamia and Babylon, and we've literally demonized them. And that's us trying to understand these forces that we don't understand. Even my own faith. I'm a minister.
100%. Yeah.
I'm a minister, but I'm a minister without a religion. I don't think you need a religion to have a spiritual connection to God. In my experience, all around the world, one thing I've found is God will come to you regardless of your religion. He cares about your faith and how you're living. And if you're practicing compassion and empathy, and if you believe, and if you're trying to actually connect with God, it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Hindu, or anything. Your prayers are just as strong. God is still listening. You're just another soul reaching out to God. And it doesn't matter which religion it is.
I love that.
So,
Yeah.
What is a demon? My answer today is different than it would have been 3 years ago. And I'm sure it'll be different later. One of the things that concerns me is when people are watching these videos from my grandparents from the 70s, 80s, 90s, mostly 70s and 80s, because we've learned more since then. It's like reading Sir Isaac Newton's theories of physics and thinking you know it all from that. We've come a long way since then.
Absolutely.
If you treat the study of the paranormal as something that's known, then it's a religion. It isn't a field of study any longer. So take everything that's said with a grain of salt. One of the things my grandfather often did that turns out to not really be all that accurate is he saw demons everywhere. And they're just not that common.
He attributed like negative spirits to demonic.
Discarnate.
Yeah.
Because they were, they were very Catholic. So if it wasn't human, and although they did believe in elementals, they did believe in fairies and things like that.
Wow.
They did. And they believed in reincarnation, which definitely isn't Catholic. But they did tend, especially my grandfather, tended to think that if it was very powerful, it had to be demonic. Even though one case that stands out in my mind, it was in Newtown, Connecticut, on Route 25. The house doesn't exist anymore, but not far from where they lived. They were called in because it was a poltergeist case and things were flying all around the place. In the kitchen, the cabinets were opening and slamming closed, and plates are flying around. There's even I believe the video that's online of a table moving is actually from that case.
Wow.
And it turned out it was actually a pissed off old man who didn't want anybody in his house. And they were not able to get rid of this thing. That's one of the problems with dealing with a human spirit is a human spirit is still a human and they have free will. And if they don't want to go, they don't have to go. They get that choice, just like you would. So what it ended up happening is the house got sold to a sporting goods store and turned into a sporting goods store. And they had to keep closing it at dusk every night because that's when all of the phenomena would start again.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't work out very well for the sporting goods store either. So it ended up being completely destroyed. And now it's the CVS on Route 25 in Newtown.
I can't imagine
where it is and everything because, what the heck? It's a CVS. I don't really care.
Right? Maybe that pissed off old man is an aisle 5 with the Q-tips. Yeah. A couple shout outs. Ken Allen from the Wizard's Table. One of our favorite shows out there and a good friend of ours says the gods of Mesopotamia became the demons. Yeah, absolutely. Philip Wyatt was just on our show on Thursday.
Yeah, they were
Ghost Education 101.
Love him.
This is negative energy is still negative and low vibrational. And if you're sensitive, your body may react in some ways. For me, my throat becomes dry and I start choking.
Oh dear.
Usually have to go outside, ground, and go back in.
Yeah. Phil is also a member of the foundation. Great guy. And I understand that. I was actually in a place in Mexico. It's a private museum. And the reaction I had in that place was overwhelming. I'd be happy to share the story with you if you wish, but
please do.
Love that. Yes, thank you.
Well, I've never talked. I don't think I've talked about this before. So I was brought into this place, not knowing a darn thing, which is the way I like to do it if I'm going to have to use my abilities.
Yeah, we agree with you with that.
Yeah, because it's too easy to get led astray. If you've already got information, then you've got preconceived notions. So it's better to know nothing. So as we entered the first room, which is the living room, they have a tradition of asking permission to be there first. And as I'm standing there and asking permission like everyone else, I get close to one wall and all of a sudden I'm getting this really sick, heavy feeling. So I'm putting out my hand and I'm trying to see if there's anything that I can feel on this collection of stuff on the wall. And there's nothing. And I mentioned all of this and they said, well, there was an interview here a couple of years ago and they pointed up to where I was standing just above my head and the wallpaper had been peeled off the wall. Oh, and they said during the interview, the wallpaper started to be shredded and pulled off the wall.
No.
Now, I had no idea why at the time. So we moved into the next room and there was a bed there. And I felt very drawn and I sat down on it and I asked permission to lay on it. And they let me. And I was overwhelmed by this feeling of guilt and sadness. Tremendous guilt and sadness. And I knew it was a woman. And she had died in that bed. She had taken her own life. And I asked about it. And it turns out that she had been responsible for a child, and the child had died. And she had been blamed for the murder of this child. She also blamed herself and took her life, but she was innocent. She hadn't actually done anything to the child. She just felt guilty because the child died.
Sure. In her care, yeah.
It turned out that during the interview in the living room, they had been describing how she had been a murderess and had killed the child. And that's when she got upset and pulled the wallpaper off of the walls.
Wow.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Good
That
for
had to
you.
be something to see.
Yeah.
And then we went in the next room, and there was this alcove. And that's where, and now this is Mexico, so they do things a little differently there.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is found guilty of a crime, even though they're dead, they will still punish the body.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, not today, but this was a long time ago.
Okay.
Still, my goodness.
How did they do that?
Yeah.
And they put her body in the wall.
Oh.
Other times they'll hang it. They'll hang the body. But in this case, they walled her up in the wall.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I wonder if
terrible.
The history of that kind of treatment is. Like, did they feel they were punishing the spirit by punishing the body?
Exactly. And as we moved upstairs to where the actual museum was, the energy just overwhelmed me. There were so many objects that they had collected that they felt were haunted, including, of course, a bloody doll. I'm so tired of haunted dolls. I cannot express how much I'm tired of haunted dolls.
I can imagine.
But it was awful. I had to keep walking out onto the roof to get away from it all. And it was only one time. There was a sword that belonged to a Mexican revolutionary. And his portrait was up, a photograph, big photograph was up there on the wall. And he was quite famous.
I've seen that before. Did you do it? Were you in a documentary or anything with that?
I believe I was, yeah.
I think I've seen you with that and the sword.
Okay. Yeah, I see. I don't pay a lot of attention to the people who are filming me. I couldn't tell you what programs I've been on or anything. But
there won't be a quiz, so it's all good.
Yeah.
But I asked permission to hold the sword, and they were more than happy to let me. Now, I expected, because this had been used in bloody battles and everything, that I was going to be overwhelmed by violence and horrible feelings and just, blood. And yet, that is exactly the opposite of what I got. I felt so secure and so safe. And this man was such an honorable man. And the power that came from that sword, as long as I was holding that, the other energies in the room, in that building, were not a problem for me. Wow. It was amazing. It was such a beautiful feeling.
That is awesome. Question out here from Joshua asks, Chris, do you really believe Annabelle, the Raggedy Ann doll, is haunted or inhabited? And I know your grandmother warned against looking at her in the eyes or taking pictures of her with her, yet people do it all the time.
Yeah. I'll get in trouble for this.
Oh, dear.
All right. I don't think it's a demon. I don't. Okay. My grandmother absolutely, she was overwhelmed by the negativity of this thing, how evil it was. And that I believe. The thing is very powerful. I think it's an egregore.
Oh, wow.
I do. And for those who don't know, there are a number of ways you can create an egregore or a tulpa. It's a thought form, a spirit that is created through our own energy. And the girls who had owned this doll, the nurses who had owned this doll, loved this doll. It was a connection to one of their mothers. They sat at the kitchen table with them. They shared meals with it. And then one day it moved. So they went out and they had a friend who they thought was a medium do a seance. They did a number of seances, and they were told that this was a little girl named Annabelle who had died in front of the house and was just looking for someone to love her. So they bought it jewelry, and they started,
attention and obsession and
feeding it tons of energy, tons of love.
Sure.
But then they started to get creeped out. And as soon as their feelings turned negative, the haunting turned negative. It stopped. It started showing up where it wasn't left. One time it even met them at the door.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Right.
I know.
Creepy as hell.
Yeah.
I know, exactly.
Open the door.
I understand they're getting creeped out. And they started finding parchment paper, old-fashioned parchment paper with messages in crayon, like "miss me" or "want to play." And one afternoon, there was a boyfriend sleeping on the couch, and he woke up. He said that he had just had a dream that Annabelle was on top of him and choking him to death. And he got up, he walked over to Annabelle, picked it up, threw it across from him, and said, "You're a stupid doll. You couldn't hurt anybody." And with that, 3 claw marks appeared across his chest. It was the fear. They had created and manifested it. And at least this is my current theory. Will that change over time? It probably will. One of the things I want to make clear to people is we don't have answers. We only have evidence, and then we try to come up with ideas to explain the evidence.
Right.
Right. Make sense of the data.
And so you have to be open-minded. You can't.
That's right.
You can't just stay in one mindset forever. I think that most of the time, these negative things that we're dealing with are caused more by our own problems and our own negativity and our own fears. One of the things that we do in the foundation, and this was a lesson I learned through the Maurice Theriault case, is we always look for the underlying problems that make that person or family open to something negative. Why are they being affected and the family that was there before them was not? Are they dealing with mental health issues? Are they dealing with drug addiction? Are they dealing with domestic violence or some other problem in the family? What is it that is giving an in to this thing to manifest negatively?
A high intense emotional state.
Chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting about the egregores. We've talked about them with Ken Allen, who was in chat before, and how to make them and that sort of thing, and what they are. That's a great theory. I like that.
An egregore can be created on purpose as well. Witches do that.
Yes.
And when they're done that way, they're given a timestamp, basically. They're sent out to do a job, and then they self-destruct. But when it is done by accident, when it's done through these unconscious fears and manifestations, that's when you get your poltergeist activity. That's when you get things out of control. And when the new entity takes on a life of its own.
Yeah.
So when you say that, do you think that of course it has a consciousness, but it's like psychosomatic.
It sort of is, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that people can, and that's often attributed to teenagers, manifest their own poltergeist activity through their energy?
Yes, absolutely. I've experienced it. Remember the case I was telling you about in Tewksbury, Massachusetts? That was a poltergeist case. And the family had a lot of turmoil amongst the children, especially. Now, Bishop McKinnell came in. He did a cleansing. The same day we did the exorcism of Maurice Theriault.
Oh, wow.
Earlier in the day. And as a matter of fact, my grandmother always blamed the Tewksbury case on my grandfather's heart attack, not Maurice's exorcism.
It's interesting.
But for 2 years, there was no activity. And then the family who I kept in touch with had invited us to spend the night, me and my cousin. So, being the gentleman that we are, we kicked the 10-year-old out of his bed and put him on the floor in a sleeping bag, and we got our sleeping bags out and took his bed. And that boy was not happy with having to give up his bed.
I can imagine.
And, you know, he didn't say anything, but, you know. And right after we turned out the light, my cousin starts yelling at me that I'm kicking the bed. And he turns the light on. And look, John, I'm in bed. I'm not moving. I'm in my sleeping bag. I didn't kick the bed. Okay. Turn off the light. Chris, stop kicking the bed. As he says that, and I don't feel a thing. As he says that, the bed picks up off the ground, flies across the room about 10 feet, slams down, breaks into pieces. He gets up and he runs out like his ass is on fire.
Probably a good idea.
I am laughing so hard because I'm like, I don't believe that just happened. That's amazing. You know, and it's only later that I realized it was that pissed off boy. Nothing had taken place
10-year-old
for 2 years, but the energy was still there, and he hooked into it. If we can do that unconsciously, imagine what we're capable of when we take possession of our own abilities, when we recognize what we're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sure. That's why I always say fear is the real enemy, and we need to overcome our fear through these interviews, through education, through understanding, and by just saying, look, what is happening in this house? Is it truly dangerous to me? You know, okay, a picture fell off the wall. Did that hurt me? No. Is it trying to tell me something? Maybe. Let's find out. I don't recommend spirit communication. I think that can be a very slippery slope, especially if you don't know what you're doing. That includes EVPs, seances, automatic writing, anything. It's your intention that is dangerous. Your intention to open the door to something. A good medium will never call on your Uncle Ted. They will talk to the spirit that's there with you. It's different. You know, they're not opening the door to something else. They're not calling out. They're just talking to
stepping into roles. Right. They could step into another role.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things are the same. It's the Ouija board kind of thing where everybody thinks the Ouija boards are the most evil thing, but it's just a tool. And I think you do have to be careful with any spirit communication.
Absolutely.
So we've certainly learned that lesson. Ken, who is an occultist, had a pretty interesting comment. I put it up before, but I wanted to read it. He says, the people on my father's side, Muskogee, stole Andrew Jackson's bottom jaw so that he would suffer in the afterlife. And this is a reference to the Mexican treatment of the body in past times. And the jaw is still in possession of the Muskogee people. And so,
Andrew Jackson certainly deserves a little bit of damnation. What a...
Yeah.
Philip
the Trail of Tears and a whole lot of other things that he's responsible for.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad they got the jaw. Philip mentioned the Slender Man is a tulpa, and I guess that's true, right? A fictionalized character.
Yeah. Manifested by.
And yet he is showing up now. He is absolutely only a tulpa. He was created around 1990 as part of, I think, creepypasta contest.
I think it was a creepypasta.
Creepypasta.
Yeah. You know, and yet today, people are seeing the Slenderman.
Mm-hmm. They report it for sure.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't even know if Sasquatch is a tulpa. I think it probably isn't, only because it's cross-cultural and it's everywhere from Australia, the Yowie or Wowie, depending, to, of course, the Yeti of Tibet and Nepal, and Sasquatch. And there's even something similar down here in South America. You know, so these creatures exist. I'm just not sure what those are. And it isn't my area of expertise. I do have a friend who investigates those, and he's actually had some tremendous success in building a relationship with what he believes to be a family group of Bigfoot in the Massachusetts area.
Oh, no kidding.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Hadn't
Yeah,
thought of it.
as a matter of fact, if you check out Jeff Messenger, he has a YouTube channel that he shares his videos, and I'm impressed.
Oh, we will look into that.
I'm definitely
we're from Mass in Rhode Island. We grew up in Mass, but we're presently in Rhode Island. Jerry says, what about communicating with a table, commonly known as table tipping? Well, I would say that would fall under the same roles as Ouija board.
It's your intention that matters here, Jerry. It isn't about how you try to communicate. It's your intention to communicate with spirit. If you do it passively, that's different. Like, for instance, you do an EVP where you just turn on your recorder and you leave it. You don't ask questions. You don't try to communicate. You just passively get information. That's fine. But when you are interacting, then it's a slippery slope. And if you're one of these people who has those underlying negative issues, then you're going to possibly be able to manifest something negatively. Because as my grandmother used to say, like attracts like. If you put out positive energy, you'll attract something positive. If you put out negative energy, you'll attract something negative.
Absolutely.
Agree 100% with you there. Absolutely. That has been our experience as well.
Yes.
And we have certainly manifested some things that weren't so nice.
Oh, yeah.
We can manifest nice things as well.
Absolutely.
So, that's good. Magic works. And
it does.
Absolutely.
I
don't like it. It offends the hell out of me. And I need to explain that as quantum physics for myself.
Yes.
But I've also worked with the witch mayor of Catemaco in Mexico. He's an extraordinarily powerful individual who leads an entire community of witches. And what they're capable of is real.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
The intentions.
Joshua says, skunk ape in Florida, I think that's different than Slender Man because Bigfoot has been seen all over the world. Slender Man, I believe, is a man-made manifestation. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
That's what I was saying as well.
Oh, we got a hat man.
Yeah. Yvonne says, have you ever heard of a shadow man who wears a hat and cloak? That would sound like Hat Man.
Yep.
And hangs around at the bottom of hospital beds.
Heidi Hollis.
Not just hospital beds. The Hat Man has been around, at least 20 or 30 years. At least 20 or 30. One of the things that fascinates me about this phenomena is how it changes over time. How, for instance, in the 80s and 90s, the gray aliens were manifesting everywhere. And yet not so much anymore. Now, right. I believe in aliens. I believe that they are here. I believe they interact with us. But I believe that particular phenomena was probably more of an egregore than it was actual alien contact. I do believe in alien contact. I just don't think all of that was. The same thing with the black-eyed children.
Oh, yes.
That were a big phenomena for a while and still tend to be a little bit, especially in England. But these manifestations over time changed, like the Phantom Hitchhiker. There was a big deal in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, we've had one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like in every town.
You're familiar with the haunted hitchhiker of Route 44 in Rehoboth.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Good old Route 44. Used to live on it.
Oh, no
yeah,
kidding.
Is that right? Yep.
Well, it's a big route.
Long.
So
it's a long road. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Kirsten used to play at Anawan Rock as a child.
So by myself. Yep.
It's interesting. Our parents had an antique store out there on Route 44, and it's definitely a pretty haunted area.
Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Most definitely. Yeah. Question?
Yeah, actually, you know what I wanted to get into? I love that you mentioned that Annabelle could be an egregore, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the museum itself. This museum is pretty famous. I know certain objects, of course, have made it into the movies, but there must be darker objects that have not, or at least as dark as some of the ones we see.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, first, I want to make it very clear that I am not responsible for the museum. That belongs to my mother and her husband. It is not open to the public. It has never been a public venue. It used to be by invitation only, and due to zoning laws changing about, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, more than that, I think, about 10 years ago, that's not even allowed any longer. My mother's husband occasionally does a night where he will bring some of the items out of the museum and to a local restaurant for display, and he'll put on a presentation, but it isn't something that you can go to. So please understand that.
Don't just show up.
It's also, it's the one thing about my grandparents' legacy that really disturbs me. I wish they had never called it a museum, because it isn't. Not really. It's a prison for those things, so that they cannot affect others. My grandparents started it as a collection, but it became something that they realized was a responsibility, and that they had to protect people from. And I hate that people today run around trying to collect haunted objects. I had a case. Oh my God, this case drove me crazy. And it isn't unusual. It's not a rare case. This woman, her job was to go in and clean out houses before they were rebuilt. And she was allowed to take anything she wanted from those houses because they were, abandoned houses. And she was sensitive enough that she could pick out what might have an attachment and might have something connected to it. And she created her own private little museum. Then she started having lots of problems. And she could not accept that it was this collection that was causing her problems. To her, it was her ex-boyfriend and her son getting drunk in a graveyard. I'm like, no.
Oops.
Yeah. So please don't collect these things. It's just not smart. We don't collect them.
It's not. I don't like it either. Chris does, though.
I kind of like it. But,
yeah, Chris
I understand. I think, not everybody should, for sure.
It's dangerous. Hell, even for my grandparents. I mean, they didn't know what to do with Annabelle for the first 10 years. It was sitting in a rocking chair in their basement.
Right. That's where I was going to go with that. Did they do anything special to kind of house the objects and protect themselves from the objects?
Yes. Finally, they figured out the best way to do that. Now, I've seen how Annabelle is treated today with oven mittens and things like that, and that just makes me shake my head.
Yeah.
Come
that's
on.
That's going to help a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's not going to do anything. But they learned how to contain the energies. I'm hesitant to go about explaining that in detail, only because I don't want to make people think that they can safely handle these things. Not if they're truly dangerous. I've had far too many cases where people didn't know what they were doing and got hurt. The best thing to do if you have a haunted object is take it far away from any house, dig a hole a foot deep, put it in there, consecrate the ground with either holy water or blessed salt, cover it up again, throw some more blessed water or blessed salt or holy water on it, and walk away. Never return. Just that negative energy will leach out into the ground and be safe. Whereas otherwise, you're just opening yourself to a world of hurt.
Philip says it's like collecting poisonous snakes and letting them roam the house. You got to lock them up. Like that is a good analogy.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
It is. If you don't know how to handle poisonous snakes, don't play with poisonous snakes.
Philip also said at one point he was going to send you a haunted doll.
Oh, Jezebel.
Was it Jezebel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's so funny.
Let's see. There's lots of comments out here. Yvonne says, once worked in an auction house and cleared a house for an estate agent. I found a dead lady's teeth in the drawer and never did another one.
Good Lord.
Oh, well, yeah. The teeth go missing. That's an interesting haunted object there. Chantel says, hello, Chris. Your grandparents inspired my interest in continuing thirst for knowledge of the paranormal since I was 5. When I first saw them on the show Sightings, I had always wanted to meet your grandmother and give her a big hug and say thank you for all the help her and her husband have done for people on Earth. Chris, you also look amazing. Also, thank you for continuing their legacy and give knowledge to the people. Your grandfather inspired me to want to become a demonologist to help people. So,
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. My grandmother, people see her in videos and they think how special she was and how sweet. The truth is, she was 10 times sweeter in real life. Oh God, she was amazing. You walked into that house and you were the center of attention. It didn't matter how many people in the house were. She was that way with everyone. She just was amazing. Hey, dear, would you like anything? Would you like a grilled cheese and tomato sandwich? Would you like me to bake you some cookies? She was so sweet. Every Sunday we'd have a family dinner. And if it was at their house, she never sat down, ever. She was waiting on all of us all the time. I'm like, Graham, will you sit down and eat with us? No, just too busy taking care of us. She was amazing. And holidays, oh my God.
I can imagine.
What a production. I mean, she would decorate that house top to bottom for Christmas. And I swear she would take 2 years buying Christmas gifts. When it came time to give gifts, you didn't get a gift. You got 30 or 40 gifts.
Oh, my goodness.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
It had to be interesting. So with the museum, well, we don't want to call it a museum, but having that collection of haunted objects in the basement, would you go down there as a child, and did you have any experiences with that?
Yeah. I was about 3 years old, and my 2-year-old sister locked me in there at night. Scared the crap out of me. I was screaming bloody murder. And luckily, my grandfather was in his office in the back, and he came running immediately. But boy, that left an impact on me. I mean, I was afraid of the dark until I was 16 years old.
I can imagine. My God, it's traumatizing.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I was psychic, and I didn't understand that. Mm-hmm. And I kept hearing whispering and feeling things and seeing things in my room, and I was terrified of the dark. And you'd think with my grandmother, that would have been something easy for us to figure out. But no, my parents didn't believe in the paranormal. My mother still hates the paranormal. She wants nothing to do with it. And no, I ended up going with psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers throughout my childhood because they couldn't figure out why I was so terrified. They blamed my father.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I imagine kids could go either way with that kind of thing. Like a lot of things, they either love what their parents do or are involved in, or relatives, or are completely turned off by it. She was frightened. It still is. I remember one evening, I was at their house, and I was in the kitchen while they were in the living room. And I had to do an interview with a young woman who had overwhelming psychic abilities and was manifesting poltergeist phenomena. And as soon as I got on with the woman, the power in the house browned out and everything just went down. And my mother just yelled, "Do you have to do that here?" That's funny.
That's wicked funny.
Like you were smoking a cigarette in a garage or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Just say, this is what happens. Tell us about your psychic abilities. When did you come to know that you had them, and what sort of psychic abilities do you have? Are you clairvoyant, clairaudient, all the above?
See, Here's the thing. Let me start with this. This is an important thing. One thing I learned in college was about labeling theory, and another thing was self-fulfilling prophecy. My issue with labeling everything the way we do, we do that to make us feel comfortable. We like to fit things in little boxes.
Right.
And when you do that, what you're really doing is putting limitations on yourself. So I don't label what I do. I've been able to use my abilities in every imaginable way. I've seen the spirits. I've communicated with the spirits. I've been a medium. I've, exhibited mediumship abilities. I've heard my voice called. I've received messages. I've been able to pick up objects and use and pick up different things through psychometry, but I don't label it because then it's a limitation that I'll put on myself. It's the same thing with when people ask what I am. I was like, well, I'm a whole lot of different things, and
right.
I wear so many different hats. It's hard to pinpoint any one particular thing.
We understand that.
Yeah, why limit yourself?
Right. We don't like labels either.
Yeah, if it's something you feel you need to try to do, then try to do it. Don't let yourself say, oh, well, no, I can't do that. I think the one word we should all limit or eliminate from our vocabulary is the word can't.
Yeah.
No, can't is a limitation you impose on yourself. I won't even say I can't fly because I have flown twice. Once in the Schmurl case in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, I levitated over the stairs. And thank God for Mrs. Schmurl and the young man that was with me, because they literally reeled me out of the sky. And then, of course, the other time was in the Tewksbury case when I flew across the room with my cousin.
So it sounded like it was kind of like you were pushed in a way, but you're saying you had a physical, like biological levitation, say, as opposed to an astral one.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was in the air. Isn't that flight?
That's good.
Yeah.
No wings required.
Yeah. And if when we say I can't, we give away our power. When we say I won't, it's a conscious choice. So I challenge everyone to change their thinking, and instead of saying I can't go with you tonight, say I won't go with you. Then it's your choice. Maybe it doesn't sound very nice, but you have the power. Don't give it away. Sorry, what was your question?
Well, how do you use, say, your psychic abilities, whatever they may be, on, say, a paranormal investigation?
The funny thing is, I started recognizing my abilities when I was about 18. And my grandmother helped me to come to terms with those and trained me, as she did with many, many other people. And we continue that legacy, by the way, with the Warren Legacy Foundation. We have 2 psychic support groups with approximately 800 people who consider themselves psychics, whether they're empaths or what have you. It's a resource for them to get help, whether it be to help them learn how to use their abilities more wisely, or how to suppress them, how to control them, how to deal with the anxiety that often overwhelms empaths. And that is a direct legacy of my grandmother and the work she did one-on-one. It's just when we became global, we realized we had to do more. So my grandmother loved the idea of the foundation and the idea of continuing their name and their work in the way we do. That's why it got started, because of the first movie. But when I was about 26, I saw a man who was about to die, and his aura was completely black. And I'd already had enough bad experiences reading auras because, everybody wants that until you tell them what you see. And then they're appalled that you know secrets you shouldn't know, and you scare the crap out of them. And I don't like scaring people. So I haven't read an aura since I was 26. But I continued to use my abilities on cases to pick up energies and understand what I was dealing with. I'm the greatest skeptic in the world. I will not believe anything I feel without evidence.
You call it evidence.
For some reason, when I came down to Latin America, and I don't know why, everyone just assumed I was a psychic, even though it's something I've never made public.
Wow.
And they kept bringing me places and having me use my abilities. And I have to admit, I've been surprised by how completely accurate I've been. There was one case in San Jose, Costa Rica. I had no idea why I was being brought to this household. It was just a wreck. It wasn't even a house anymore. And I was there with a team from Mexico that had flown down to meet me. And as I'm walking down the stairs of the outside of the house to get underneath the house, I start choking. And I get under the house, and that choking feeling is getting much, much worse. And I turned and I said, was there an American living here, former military? Yeah. Did he hang himself? Yes. He hung himself right here where you're standing. Oh, yeah. Okay. That video's online as well, but I think it's in Spanish. Sorry. But I tried to communicate with the guy, and at first he was saying, no, I'm happy here. This was my home. This is where I want to be. Just leave me alone. And whenever I moved to where he was, he'd move away. But he was attracted to this one woman from Mexico. And while the rest of the team was using their gadgets and trying to pick up stuff the way they do,
sure,
I'm old school. I don't use those things. She and I started up the stairs again, and the spirit was with us. And through time, we were able to communicate with him. Turned out he wasn't happy to be there. He was terrified that because he had committed suicide, he had also killed his 2 dogs before he committed suicide.
Oh, geez.
Because he didn't want to leave them without somebody to take care of them.
I guess that's one way to look at it.
I know. Well, obviously, he wasn't in his right mind. Right. He was terrified he was going to hell, which happens a lot with people who commit suicide. They think that. It's not true. They're not going to hell.
Judgment.
But that's what we've been taught, and that's what a lot of them believe. And
remain earthbound.
Right.
Yeah.
Post-mortem.
Instead of passing over, because he was terrified. I was able to convince him that he didn't have anything to fear, that he could go to the white light that he saw, and that he would be okay. And he agreed to pass over. The woman I was with was crying, and she could feel him as well. And it was a beautiful experience, really. So how do I use my abilities? I use my abilities to help people. I was down here in Colombia, in Bogota, with an archbishop on his birthday in a haunted brothel.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
I mean, come on! How cool a story is this?
Yeah, right? That's pretty cool.
What did you do, Chris? You hung out with an archbishop in a haunted brothel on his birthday.
Yeah.
But it was a former strip joint and brothel, and it had been. I knew nothing about this place, nothing at all, and yet I was able to communicate with a girl who had died from a drug overdose and help her to pass over. I was able to figure out that there were bodies that had been dismembered and destroyed with chemicals or through lime down in the basement.
Wow.
And that was confirmed by the government official that was with us. I was able to figure out that a bunch of narcos and politicians had been a huge part of this place, and that there were certain areas that were incredibly violently, the impression of violence in those locations was just overwhelming. And yet I'm on this beautiful marble staircase, and I'm thinking, normally staircases are full of energy for some reason. They're enclosed spaces. And yet there was nothing, absolutely no feeling in the on the staircase. And I mentioned that to the Archbishop, and he says, well, that's because the staircase was built after the brothel was closed down. It's brand new. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when I get that kind of evidence and that kind of feedback, I have to admit it surprises me. I never trust a psychic. Never, ever change your life because of something a psychic says without evidence, please. Even the very best, my grandmother, was only right about 70% of the time, which means 30% of the time she could lead you astray. So don't change your life because somebody tells you that there's a Lilith demon attached to you. And yes, that is another one of my cases.
Yeah, that's something you start to learn when you look into parapsychology. When they measure these sort of psychic experiences and their hit rates and things like remote viewing can show you that. It's like you can get it, but it's not 100%. No one is 100%.
No.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary. Don't get me wrong, but it isn't enough to change your life. You need the evidence to back up what those people are telling you. And unfortunately, there are psychics who are either so insecure that they have to be right, or they're just so egotistical that they think they're right all the time. And they can be very dangerous to you. So be careful.
Yeah. Egos and drama and the paranormal? Never.
Good Lord.
I see that all the time, and I hate it. God,
Yeah, we do too.
Yeah.
That's why it's just us, really.
This is our team.
Yeah.
All right.
We are the team.
But we tag along with people as well.
Yeah.
We don't. That's one of our rules. Once ego is in the room, God is out. If you're in this for your ego, you're not in the right place, and we won't have anything to do with you.
Jerry wanted to know what you do to protect yourself on investigations.
I use the white light, the Christ light. Surround myself beforehand. I surround myself after. I also carry a rosary that belonged to my grandmother. Don't need it. It's only a focus for my faith, but I like to have it with me. What's important, though, is just like evil must be invited in, so must good. And if you want God's protection, you have to ask for it. Then you have to be very careful about what you're doing, because you still have free will. And just because you ask for God's protection, or the angels, or Padre Pio, and I do call on Padre Pio an awful lot. I ask my grandparents for their help. They have actually been there for me on a number of occasions. But if you do the wrong thing, you're still throwing away your protection. So you be very, very careful and know what you're doing. This is not a game. And you are responsible for more than yourself. You're responsible for the lives of others when you're on a case. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Stephen Woodward says, hello. Hey, Stephen, how are you doing?
Hello there, sir.
Chantel says, yes, you're right. Nothing is 100%. Things and decisions are continuously changing. And Sandy says, leave your ego at the door.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Absolutely. I got to agree with all that advice. What can you tell us what sort of investigations have you been doing more recent times in the Warren?
We're working on so many things, but honestly, 90% of our cases are psychological, and have absolutely nothing to do with the paranormal. One of the dangers I find is when you're so excited about the paranormal that you start immediately jumping into it being paranormal. Never assume that what you're dealing with is paranormal. Always assume it's natural. And that goes for people who think that they're living in a haunted house. Until you have overwhelming evidence that what you're dealing with is paranormal, just assume it's squirrels or trees hitting your window, or
Right.
that it's natural. And then when it is absolutely certainly paranormal, assume it's harmless. Do not feed fear into the equation. There's no need. I had a great case many years ago, about 38 years ago. Every night, 10 o'clock at night, this family would hear a door open upstairs, footsteps come down the stairs, the kitchen door open, a non-existent popcorn maker would turn on and make popcorn. And then those footsteps, the kitchen door would open again and footsteps would go up the stairs every single night. There was no ghost there. It was just a residual haunting. It was something that had been a ritual for the homeowner in the past, and it had left an impression because it was so important to that person. Nothing to be afraid of, nothing to ever worry about.
Right.
Cases we're working on now. Remember, I deal with a worldwide organization. And I don't ordinarily, sadly, get to do the hands-on work very often anymore. I will when people come to me. But I think it's the nature of my own abilities. My grandmother was a light trance medium. And when I'm working a case, I don't remember the details, which is why we have to keep detailed records. Because as soon as I walk away from a case, I've forgotten what it's about. We've got one in the United States where he's certain he's under possession. Well, no, he's got overwhelming mental health issues. He's been homeless. He's a transsexual who's not taking his medications properly. And he's a diagnosed schizophrenic. That's the reality. And so if I were to label some of what I do, I'd say I was a paranormal social worker. We're going to help you no matter what your issue is, if you come to us. But that may mean that we hook you into the right services. It isn't necessarily that we're going to give you therapy or we're going to be the hands-on help. We're going to help you get what you need.
Maybe some direction, but there is an argument for things like spirit release therapy. That's out there where people would attribute mental health issues to being something of a possession, almost like possession light.
And as I said earlier, underlying conditions are always there. And just because you have a mental health issue does not mean that you don't also have paranormal issues. As a matter of fact, it's more likely.
We agree.
Like people on the autistic spectrum. Fascinating to me. I honestly think they may be the next step in our evolution with their focus and their clarity. And they have, many of them, not all, but many of them have extraordinary psychic abilities, and they can manifest poltergeist activity, or they can be unbelievably aware of others and other feelings and other thoughts around them, even when they're not in the same room. So just because you have a diagnosis doesn't mean that you're not also dealing with paranormal. 50% of our job is truly understanding the issue. We don't jump to conclusions. And the one hard rule I have is we never say it's demonic. Ever.
Yeah, D word, dreaded D word.
Yeah. You don't feed people fear.
No.
You empower people. You help them to understand that they have the power.
Right. That's excellent.
Chantel Shillingford says, since the pandemic, people's mental health has gone off the charts. And that's a good point. Since the pandemic,
It's
have
terrible.
you noticed a difference in the kind of cases you're getting? And
it has stirred up the spirit world.
Stirred the pot.
Yeah. The spirits are on the other side, and they're saying, "What the hell's going on over there?" And they get stirred up, and they're reacting to what we're going through. They're just human like us, and when we are negative and we're reacting badly, that's how they're going to react.
Exactly.
They're playing off of us. Remember, there was that great movie, what was it called? The Others?
Oh yes, where they
Kidman?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she didn't know she was a ghost. She didn't understand, and the living people in the house were terrifying her.
Yes. So it was the opposite. That was an excellent movie.
It was it really was. And I honestly think for a lot of spirits who are in denial, that retreat to where they felt most comfortable in life, they are afraid. They're more afraid of us than we are of them.
Right.
Now you sounds like that you're dealing with snakes again.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a little like the I see dead people thing too, right? Yeah. What was the name of that?
Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense, yes.
Yeah, that was great. And that's based on a true case as well.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. There's questions out there too.
All right. So also when you are on a paranormal investigation, you don't like to use a lot of the tools and that sort of thing.
I don't, but a lot of other people I work with do.
What do you like to bring to the investigation?
I use my iPad. That's it. It's got a camera, it's got recording, and I can take photos. Never felt a need for more than that. My grandfather just used a cassette recorder and a camera. If a spirit wants to communicate, the spirit will communicate. Having said that, I mean, I have seen the results of a lot of these things like K2 meters, I think they're called, and a bunch of other things.
Yes.
And if it's backed up with other evidence, okay, I'll accept it. We used one of these meters while I was helping that girl who died, the stripper who had died of drug overdose. Helping her to pass over. At first, I was just talking to her, but then they brought in this meter, and she started talking through the meter as well. And we were able to help her to pass over. So it was interesting for me to have that verification that it wasn't just me having a fantasy in my own mind.
Right.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit more about crossing somebody over?
It's light.
It always seems a little, I don't know, unclear, just going to the light and that kind of thing. Some mediums I know bring relatives out and friends that have passed. What's that experience like for you?
I'm a therapist. So for me, it's therapy. It's a negotiation. It's helping them to come to terms with what's actually happening and happened to them. And then if they've got unfinished business, if they've got a message to get across. For instance, I had a case with a young man who had died of a drug overdose, and everyone thought it was suicide. And he could not pass over until he gave a message to his mother. And I need to make it clear, I am not comfortable using those abilities. I don't do it very often. And I only do it when I really feel a need. And this one mother had come to me and asked for the help. And I felt the need. And I was talking to her in a way I never would talk to somebody I didn't know. And I was using terms of endearment and things that I wouldn't use with somebody I loved. Mm-hmm. And yet those were exactly the things that her son would say to her. And once his message that he had not committed suicide and that he was fine, once that message got through, he was able to pass over. It is, in my experience and the way I deal with it, it is a therapy session. It is time for them to communicate and to get their fears across, because they're only people.
A kind of
Stop
healing.
being afraid of a ghost. It's just a person.
Right. Just another form.
Debbie Wallace Hogan or Hagen, I can't quite see it here, is asking, when someone passes over, can they still communicate with us? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, holidays, family gatherings, funerals, births, weddings, they're attracted because that's when we remember them. It's the law of attraction. And they will come to us because we remember them. And they want to see the new baby born. They want to see the happiness of the family. And so they can. My grandparents passed over, but they keep coming back.
Do you have experiences with Ed and Lorraine?
Oh, yeah. Quite a few, as a matter of fact. When I spent the last year and a half with my grandmother before she died. Matter of fact, I was the one that spent her last day with her. I was with her when she passed. And when she died, I had my iPad, and immediately it went from 35% power to 0.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she just sucked the power right out of that thing. I said, Graham, are you still here? Are you okay? And this high-pitched wail just, okay, Graham, okay, gotcha. All good. I'm sitting there with her body, and she's like, okay. Then we had a online Christmas party during the pandemic over a year ago. And I was aware that my grandparents were right there with us. And I mean, I looked at the medium that I was sitting next to, and she said, yeah, they're here. Your grandmother just said, we're here, Christopher. And nobody calls me Christopher except my grandmother.
Wow.
Right. I understand that. Not unless I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, no. It was sweet. It was so sweet. Always. And no, with my grandmother, she never raised her voice to me in her life. Didn't matter how bad I was. My grandmother was an angel.
That's so sweet.
But then I was in a sanitarium. And I don't like to go into places like this. I don't believe in paranormal tourism. But I was there because people that I was working with, who I'd come to Costa Rica to be with, had asked me to go. And I thought, well, if I have the opportunity to help, then it's worth going to. And there were a number of experiences. But the one with my grandparents, I had escaped from all of these people who were following me around with their cameras and their recorders. I'm like, I'm not a celebrity, for God's sake, stop.
But you are.
I'm not. I'm really not. But I escaped into this one little room, and this little child came up to me, a spirit, and he was afraid. He did not want to pass over. And I had asked my grandparents to be with me for this day. And all of a sudden, I'm aware that my grandfather is over here. And he's like this. Chris, what are you doing? Yeah. But my grandmother comes over from the other side, and she gets down to the child's level. And she just took him by the hand. And they went into the light and passed over. And I was like, wow, that was amazing. And we also picked up a couple of things in the sanitarium. It's Sanatorium Duran, outside of San Jose. And they, for about a week, this thing was just running back and forth on my roof, and slamming things. And then at 2:00 in the morning, I think it was, it turned on my television and it was blaring music. I was like, oh, just cut it out. I got up and I turned it off.
And did you actually see the entity?
No,
or
not at
just
that
hear
time.
the results of the running footsteps and the TV just comes
Oh
on?
yeah, no, all of that I saw and heard, but I didn't see the spirit at that time. I wasn't looking. I wasn't interested. You got to understand, it's a little different with me. I've done this my whole life, and if I'm completely honest, I don't like the paranormal anymore. You know, I do this to help people. I don't do this out of some, excitement or desire any longer.
Mm-hmm. The reward's different for you.
Yeah, it's just about helping. That's all I care about.
That's great. Stephen Woodward noted that there was asked what was going on in the background, and it was sounding like somebody yelling. And earlier there was some noise.
Yeah,
not saying it's
barking.
Paranormal, but if you have something going on,
I'm in a fishing village in
right?
Colombia, and there's a guy with a megaphone who comes by 3 times a day making announcements for some reason.
That's what we heard. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, I like the debunk because I was like, what if he doesn't have dogs?
No, and the dogs are out there too, causing trouble. And
they must love the megaphone.
It's a busy little village.
Nope. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, that sounds so fascinating.
Awesome. Yes.
Jessica says, it's been bothering me lately that I was not able to be with my father a few days prior to his passing and was calling out names and my daughter's name. It's like I have been feeling sadness and reliving it in my head and heart. My father was in Arizona. I was in New Hampshire over the phone. Yeah. Those things are
as long as you were able to communicate with him, even today, you can communicate with him. You can still pray to him. You can still say what you need to say, and he will hear it. It's that law of attraction. Mm-hmm. You don't need these gadgets or Ouija boards or mediums or seances to say what you need to say.
Right.
They will hear you. And if it's important, you can certainly bring them peace.
Absolutely.
Chantel has a question for you. She asks, I have always been scared to trust child spirits because, like all the shows you see, there could be something and it isn't. Yeah, we talk about child spirits a lot.
All the time.
Is there any way to know? She means distinguish a child spirit from something maybe playing the role of a child spirit.
Right. And yeah, we see that a lot. But let me first say those TV shows are crap, and please stop watching them. You cannot produce a haunting on a television production schedule, and they are meant to titillate. They're meant to terrorize. They're meant to excite you. They're not true.
Right. It's a show.
Yeah.
Right. They don't run on.
You're not learning what to do by especially watching that Ghost Adventures. I've watched 2 of those episodes, and if you did any of the crap that they show on there, you'd be exposing yourself to so much danger. So don't do that.
That's true.
We certainly don't like the
calling
out a spirit
and taunting them, and we don't like that at all. Like you were mentioning earlier, right? Do that.
So don't think you're learning anything from watching those. You want to learn about the paranormal, and oh my God, this is going to sound egotistical. We've got a YouTube channel with God knows how many videos. It's the Warren Files. Check it out. It's free. Mm-hmm. We also, the production value sucks. And you're going to see me go through a whole lot of changes over the last 2 or 3 years. I've lost 250 pounds.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
You look great.
That just means, my God, I look, it's embarrassing. But you'll get good information and you won't be terrorized. I'm also not, for the most part, going to teach you how to do what we do because that's not how you learn. We're working on a series of actual classes. One of our goals in the foundation is to educate the future generations of researchers so that they're more focused on helping people and not getting clicks and likes. Mm-hmm. And we also it's important to us that we educate the public so that you're not so terrorized.
Right.
Favorite movie recreation of one of the Ed and Lorraine's
if it's got to be one of my grandparents, is definitely the first Conjuring. Although my favorite moment would be in Conjuring 3, the very last scene, where, and I'm not giving anything away here, but my grandmother in real life always wanted a gazebo. And my grandfather finally got her one. And in The Conjuring 3, the last scene, they recreated that moment where my grandfather brings my grandmother into the backyard and there's a gazebo there. And it made me cry. That was the best.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And I don't think they indicate that it's a new thing, do they, in the movie? I don't recall that part. So was it just something you noticed that they did based on the actual story?
Well, it's the last scene in the movie. It is the last scene in the movie, and it's very true. Most of the stuff in the movie isn't true. My grandfather never tried to kill my grandmother. They never broke into a morgue.
Right.
And in reality, that case had nothing to do with a Satanist. It was a Ouija board.
Wow.
So don't look at the Conjuring movies and expect to see the truth.
They are definitely entertaining.
Yeah.
And they seem.
But the first one was my favorite.
I regard.
Although, if you want to know my favorite, very accurate horror film, it's the original Exorcist.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Some liberties taken there as well.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. There were actually 3 exorcists involved. It was a boy, and none of them died. We actually got to meet one of the exorcists. My grandparents and I at one of my grandparents' lectures. He came and introduced himself afterward.
Wow.
But as a general indication of how bad things can get in an exorcism case, it's pretty good. I mean, heads don't spin, but a lot of the rest is very real.
It's not physically possible. I imagine you might see it, but it wouldn't be physically possible. What about the pea soup vomit?
I've never experienced it. Doesn't mean
that was one of the things that was
similar
really happened. And the real possession case that The Exorcist is based on, I think there was a number of vomiting.
Somebody's asking about Canadian paranormal researchers. We have several in our foundation who are excellent. Sarah James comes to mind, sorry.
I noticed there's a number of a really robust paranormal teams on your site and on warrenfiles.com.
Yeah.
You kind of network them are they set up by kind of like different regions and that sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah. We by the way, Francois Dubé is outside of Montreal. He's another one that's very good. We've got a doctor in Halifax who helps us with the medical side, because one of the things we don't do is ignore the medical and psychological aspects of a case. That's necessary before we do anything. We need to have complete information. But we will create teams as needed for our cases. We don't necessarily use the teams that come to us as teams, although we do. We will. We don't exclude people, say, well, you can come, but not your teammates. As long as they're members of the foundation, that's what matters to us. We vet everyone, and it doesn't mean we get it right every time. We just got rid of somebody recently because we found out that they say that they've done 100 exorcisms in the past year without any psychological or medical evaluations, including on a child. And I'm sorry. Once we found out that was going on behind our backs, you're gone.
That sounds offensive.
Exactly. That's just insane. We care about our clients first. They come first, not us.
So a person out there that's experiencing a haunting and they want to reach out to you, should they go to www.warrenfiles.com and hit the contact?
Yes, please. Or warrenlegacy.com. It's the same thing. Yep. We there'll be a Google form that you'll fill out. It's quick and easy, and that will get the process started so that we can then do an intake interview, make sure that we're getting good information, and we can do everything we can to help you. Our services are free. We don't charge. We never have, never will. And they're private. We will not expose you to the public. You need to also understand, though, that just like I talked about some cases here tonight, we could use your story to educate the public, but we will never identify you in any way. We will not share any information that might lead people to know who you are. You come first.
Anonymous.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you, when they go on their website, do they have big form, like you have like forms to fill out when they are asking to have you come into a case? Do you do that? You have forms that they need to fill out and have like ask all kinds of questions?
It's just an initial Google form. One initial Google form. It's not very complicated. It used to be much longer, but not now. Now we do most of the work for you.
Oh, that's great.
Well, having said that, it's important to understand that this is your battle. We're there to help. We're there to guide. We're there to fight with you. But if you're not helping yourself, then we can't help you. If you have a drinking problem or you're using heroin and you refuse to stop, well, then you're just leaving yourself open, and there's very little we can do to help you.
Right.
You need to get that taken care of as well.
That's what Anne-Marie Young said earlier to one of your comments about that. Greg Koss asked, Chris, how do you feel about crossing ghosts over? Ghosts.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to help. But that's how I feel about any time I can help anybody. You know, a spirit is just a person. You know, the way I
drive to help people is it's really
that's all it is.
It's positive.
You know, ghosts. Here's the difference between us and ghosts. It's very simple. We're driving cars and they're pedestrians. They got out of their car. But they're still us. We're still the pedestrians too. We're just in our cars.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's a good way to put it.
That is a good way to put it. And with that, I think we're going to conclude our show. I wanted to thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Yes.
And from Colombia.
Yes.
From Colombia, where the sun is shining.
Yes, it is.
3 degrees, which I would love to be.
Got a ton of snow out here, and the wind is blowing 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's starting to get concerned we might lose power.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not coming across the air and it's quiet enough, but the wind is howling here. And just wanted to thank you and let people know that they can reach out to you from www.warrenfiles.com. And of course, you have the Warren Files show on the Paranormal United Network.
That's right.
On TV.
Yeah.
That you do with Heather. And I'd like to thank Heather as well for putting this together.
Yes, thank you, Heather.
Yes. Heatherly Landon, Dr. Heatherly Landon. She's she's our chief administrator, and God knows I couldn't do this without her. She is the backbone of the foundation. I have a lot of skills, but administrative is not one of them.
It's understandable.
Yeah, she's super knowledgeable, and we got to talk to Heather this week and with Philip, and we had a great
They're
time.
awesome.
So
yes.
Thank you. And
so thank you again for coming on, and thank everybody for listening.
Thanks everybody out in the audience for your chat, questions, and comments. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a show. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. And Chris and Kristen, thank you both very much. You've been wonderful. And to everybody else that's joined us, thank you for the nice comments. Thank you for the lovely comments about my grandparents. And God bless you all.
Thank you, Chris. This has been a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely.